Hello everyone, welcome to Big Data Thoughts. Today we are going to talk about another architectural pattern called serverless architecture. We are going to deep dive into what it is, what are the pros, cons, what are the serverless offerings by each of the prominent cloud vendors. We would also look at where not to use a serverless architecture and where all to use it. So let's get started. So before understanding serverless computing, it is important to understand what is event-driven computation, because these two are closely tied together. So what is the event-driven computation? It is nothing but an architectural pattern which tells us that for any action to take place, there has to be an event or a trigger. So there will be an event that will be generated, which in turn will cause a function to be called or an action to be performed. That's event-driven computation. This architectural pattern has its own benefits, like it's a very loosely coupled architecture. So the services and functions that are there, they will get executed only when there is a trigger. It also encourages the developers to have the mindset of thinking about what will trigger the actions, or what should be my event or a trigger that would call my function. So it also promotes that kind of a mindset. Now coming on to serverless computing. Serverless computing is also known as function as a service. So we have seen there are multiple as a service things available, like platform as a service, infra as a service. We talk about software as a service. There are many such offerings, but serverless essentially means providing function as a service or backend as a service. Now what it does is it removes serverless computing means we are talking about a situation where we do not have to spawn servers or do the installation, etc. It is serverless. So we are just triggering the function to get executed. Rest of the infrastructure and server demand is taken care by somebody else. So for us it is serverless. And these are always going to be event driven. It also eliminates need of running continuously certain kind of infrastructure at the backend, which will be very expensive. Because in any kind of a scenario, if we have a cluster which we have spawned up and we are running it continuously 24/7, it is going to incur cost. Whether it is in-premise or whether it is on cloud. Even on cloud, after having cheap, low-cost services, it is going to incur a lot of cost. So serverless will help us in removing that cost, because we are not running any cluster all the time. We are just having an event which is triggering up a cluster where our function is going to get executed. We are going to look at this in more detail, like how this is happening. So the biggest point to remember here is these are also known as function as a service, backend as a service, and the most important point here is that serverless architecture does not require servers. That doesn't mean that there is no server needed. It just means that we are not taking care of bringing up the servers, maintaining them, updating them, or keeping them alive 24/7. We are just using services from a third party. That is why it is known as function as a service or backend as a service, because a cloud provider or a third party is provisioning those servers for us on demand. So it is sporadic. As and when there is an event, it gets the server gets spawned up, the function executes, and then the server terminates. Now let us look at the progression, how it all started and how did we come to serverless computing. So initially, back in the old days, like couple of years back, we were using physical machines. If we had to set up a cluster of 10 nodes, then there had to be 10 physical machines which were connected to each other. After that came the concept of virtualization, which means that there could be one physical machine but multiple virtual machines created out of that physical machine. After virtualization, we moved on to cloud computing. Cloud computing made our life very, very easy, because now we had cost optimizations, we had scalability, we had somebody else doing the bulk of work for us and we using that as a service. After cloud computing concept evolved and people started using, the concept of containers came in. Container made our life much more easier, because now it was easy to package everything together and deploy it. That became easier. Then came the concept of serverless, which is further more simplified and easy to use, because the entire bringing up of a node, creating the cluster, and then executing our code, that part is offloaded to somebody else, and we could just concentrate on the business logic, or the logic that we really want to implement as a part of our code. So we had to write the function and somebody else was doing rest of the background work for us. Now, few things that we need to remember when we talk about serverless, we are talking about functions. There will be an event which will trigger a piece of code which is nothing but a serverless function. Now, that function essentially is similar to a serverless microservice because we are talking about functions which have their own functionality and they serve a particular purpose. They are completely independent of other functions. So we may have multiple functions written down, just like in microservices we broke the monolithic into multiple microservices which were operating independently. Similarly here, the serverless functions are independent of each other. They have to be stateless. They serve one particular purpose. Each function, we can think of it as representing one API method or perform one process. So all in all, the functions need to be lightweight, scalable, and they should serve a single purpose. That's how we can have an efficient serverless architecture.
What are the benefits of serverless architecture? So obviously the benefits of a serverless architecture are rapid development and deployment, ease of use, lower cost, because now we are not having an infrastructure that is running 24/7 or we don't need people to maintain it, so it is lower in cost and it gives us scalability, and it also helps us in reducing the maintenance or those kind of overheads of creating a cluster, maintaining it, updating it. All that overhead is gone, so definitely the time to market also becomes lesser. The development cycle reduces. So all in all, it gives us benefit in terms of efficiency as well as cost. But no service, no architecture or nothing comes with all benefits. There are of course limitations that are there. So in serverless also there are a number of limitations that are there. For example, we do not have control over the infrastructure because somebody else is controlling the infrastructure. If we want to control it or fine tune it as per our needs, or if we want to use it as a shared infrastructure, that is not possible because it is owned by somebody else. There are situations where I do not want to have a vendor locking, but here I have to use a particular service from a vendor. So all the major cloud providers provide serverless computing, but when we are using their service, we are tied to them. And another important thing to keep in mind is that serverless is not a silver bullet. Nothing for that matter is a silver bullet solution for all use cases. So this should not be used for long running jobs, because serverless functions, when they execute, there is a default timeout that is there. After a certain idle time, the infrastructure would be taken down. So it is not meant for long running jobs. It should only be used where we have a trigger and we want to execute something and just finish it off, so that the server spins up, the code executes and the server goes down. So it is meant for those kind of jobs, not for long running ones. Then serverless does have a cold start problem, though all the vendors have reduced that cold start drastically, and it is not that long as it used to be. So cold start, what it means is that whenever we are executing our code, or when we do a trigger, our function gets called. So there is an infrastructure that gets spinned up for us, and then the code runs. So there is a lead time before actually the execution happens. That's the cold start time, because you do not have an infrastructure that is always up and running. Somebody is spawning the infrastructure for you based on the event or a trigger. So there is definitely a little bit of cold start, but if you look at the services today by all the cloud providers, they are quite mature and the cold start time has drastically reduced. So these are some of the limitations of serverless architecture which we should definitely keep in mind, and we should look at our use case very carefully to see whether it really fits into serverless or not. Now, if we talk about cloud providers, all the major cloud providers, AWS, Azure, Google, provide serverless computing. So AWS has something called AWS Lambda, Azure has Azure Functions, and Google has Google Cloud Functions. But the concept remains the same, what I spoke about, an event, a function that we write, and that function gets executed. And we are charged by only the time that our function is getting executed and the servers are up and running. So it is cost efficient. Now, what are the use cases where we should use? So where we should not use, we already discussed. For long running jobs, we should not use. But where it ideally makes sense or where people are using it today is auto scaling of APIs and websites. It becomes very easy to auto scale with a serverless architecture. Image and video manipulation. So many of the big companies are using serverless for image video manipulation, because this is a task which will complete within a stipulated time and it can be very well event driven. The moment an image lands, for example, if Netflix, right, we look at Netflix, if there is a new video that is getting uploaded on Netflix, it has to be transcoded into multiple formats. So that can utilize something which is serverless because it's an event driven thing. The video or an image lands in, you run your process of conversion and you dominate the servers. Then event streaming, of course, in event streaming scenarios, we can use serverless. Multi-language applications, because everything here is a function which is independent of other functions. So it will suit the purpose where we want to have multi-language applications. Even for CI/CD and automation, this can be a good use case because we can do automation, we can have code which is smaller because we are talking about functions. So it is easier to update that code and incrementally build that pipeline. So these are the most prominent use cases that are being used in the market, and this just gives a reference as to what kind of use cases are there, but it's not the laundry list of use cases because there can be many such use cases. So this is all about serverless computing, the concept, pros and cons, where to use, where not to use. I hope this video has helped you to clarify that concept. Please like, share and subscribe to the channel to get more interesting videos. Thank you.